Hello, a very, very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you are finding this series called the Gita Decoded as educational and enlightening as I am. I've learned a number of things since sitting on this side of the chair across from Sister Denise, because she has such a refreshing way of looking at this ancient scripture. As you know, we're still on chapter 2, and it's taking us much longer than I anticipated to go through it, which is great because it means that we're extracting more of the depth and wisdom that this magnificent and ancient Hindu scripture has to offer to us, the reader. Sister Denise, very warm welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The first question that I have for you is, what is chapter 2 saying about what our relationship as human beings should be in relation to objects, to things? What should our relationship be with matter, including this?
Including this body. The most important message is, I am the discarnate spiritual being, the soul, and this is my instrument. And never to allow oneself to come under the illusion that this is me. But because we are so caught up in the senses and the objects of the senses, we easily come under the delusion that this is me or that is you. Then we get attached. Then we're in bondage. So the idea is to stay in that stage so that you can be free.
Okay. My next question is, what should our relationship be, according to chapter 2, to other beings in physical bodies?
Well, what happens is, when you're thinking the person is their body, you get pulled by attraction and repulsion. So again, you remember we were talking about the this flow that goes on: attraction, repulsion, success, failure, the pairs of opposites. And being caught up in the pairs of opposites means we're in bondage. So being neutral means we are not under the sway of these negative, positive polarities, and we remain neutral, we remain free. That's what our relationship has to be with other people, because otherwise we start to be dependent on people, emotionally dependent, psychologically dependent. We give away our power, and then we become in bondage. So there's 3 things: people, places, and objects, to which we give away our power, to which we surrender ourselves and become enslaved.
Okay, that is that's a say that again. There are 3 things to which
we come into bondage: people, places, and things. And we give away our power, and then we are slaves. We don't want to be slaves. Why do we have to be slaves? We're supposed to be masters. The human being, the human spirit, in the hierarchy of things, is the master of the world. But as soon as you forget yourself, you become a slave of people, places, and things. So everything's upside down. Then you suffer.
The next stanza reads as follows, and it got me thinking, because I really don't understand what is meant by this. Those who are established in wisdom, the wise ones who have abandoned the fruit born of action, are freed from the bondage of rebirth. Go to the place that is free from pain. Now, Sister Denise, whilst it's a very attractive stage or state of mind to be in, where you're free from pain, I mean, which human being doesn't want to be there or go there? What is meant by being freed from the bondage of rebirth?
Again, I think this is one of the stanzas where the angle of the Brahma Kumaris is at odds with this, because in our teachings that are given to us by the incorporeal through the medium of Brahma, we learn that once a soul is in the world of matter, you can go temporarily to the world beyond pain, but you can never become totally free from rebirth, because you are here. You're an embodied soul, and you have a karma with matter. And I think that what we would say is you can become free from rebirth through karmic bondage, and enter into rebirth through a relationship of karma samband. We have karma bandhan, the bondage of karma, and then you have karma samband, where you're in relationship with people, but in a state of freedom, not in a state of bondage. But we wouldn't say that you are without rebirth. You see, in much of the Hindu practice, the Hindu religion, the aim of the religion is to go to nirvana and not come back. It's the same as Buddhism. You want to go to nirvana and not come back. In a sense, it's also like that in Christianity, where you have the idea of Jesus Christ going to sit on the right hand of God and staying there to rule paradise, and that's it. Although on the other hand, they talk about a second coming, but they don't really go into the idea of rebirth, particularly at this time at least. So the whole question of the belief that a lot of people have, that if you are reincarnating, there's suffering. What we are saying is that yes, there is reincarnation with suffering, but there's also a time period, which we call the Satyuga, the Treta Yuga, where you incarnate as a divine or divinized human being in relationship with other human beings in a perfected world, where your reincarnation is not due to karmic bondage, but due to karmic harmony.
What I found interesting about the next stanza is the use of a term, and I'd like you to explain how this works. It reads, when your intellect stands fixed in deep meditation, unmoving, disregarding Vedic doctrine, then you shall attain self-realization. What I find curious is it says, when your intellect stands fixed in deep meditation. Is meditation an aspect of the intellect, or is it an aspect of the mind?
Well, meditation, the mind meditates. The intellect puts the mind where it can meditate. So the intellect and the mind have to work together. You know, the intellect and the mind are very, very subtle. They are called, in Brahma Kumari's knowledge, they are called faculties of the soul. So the intellect is your intelligence, is your conscience, is your capacity for calculation, judging, discrimination, etc. But your mind is like an organ of sense perception, where you can sense qualities, where you can actually experience connectedness with God. The intellect cannot experience anything. The mind is where you experience. In a person's eyes, there are cells where you can see form, and there are cells where you can see color. And so the mind corresponds to color, and the intellect corresponds to form. And you have to have both together, otherwise you can't see.
Wow. That's my response to what you just said. Okay, Sister Denise, the next stanza reads, when your intellect crosses beyond the thicket of delusion, then you shall become disgusted with that which is yet to be heard, and with that which is being heard, in brackets, in the Veda. Okay? The thicket of delusion is very descriptive, isn't it? the visual imagery of that is comes across quite strongly. How does delusion become an obstacle in one's relationship with God and with your own spirituality?
It also connects with the previous one that you mentioned, you know, that you can only have self-realization when you can see past matter. And yourself is non-material, God is also non-material. So as long as you cannot see past this thicket of delusion, you will consider it to be real. You will act as if it is real in the sense that it has dominion over you. You are under the influence of what's known as Maya and matter. So Maya is the illusion where you operate as if something physical has power over you. And what you have to have is the realization that it's needs to be seen simply as a matter of sense perception. Because as long as you know that it is simply a perception, that diminishes its power over you, because you see that it's not real. Then you come back in your own power.
So, Sister Denise, another thing that struck me about the next aspect is that human beings prefer to do than to be. And I want to know why this is so. When your intellect stands fixed in deep meditation, unmoving, disregarding Vedic doctrine, then you shall attain self-realization. Okay? So God says, child, be still, be with me, and then you'll attain what it is that you want to attain. But this is not our inclination, is it?
Sometimes people talk about not human beings, we're human doings.
Yes, I've heard that.
There's another very well-known expression that you find in the biblical tradition, be still and know that I am God.
Yeah.
You see, because what people want is they want to be able to feel and to realize themselves and to realize God. They want that. That's a desire, but it's not an addictive desire. The desires to the sense perceptions are addictive desires, and they are desires that cause the soul to get into bondage. But the desire to know yourself and to know God and to experience that is very elusive, because everything about you strains to get into some kind of action, you see, because
yes.
we are you can say addicted to our bodies. We are addicted to our sense perceptions. We are addicted to the objects of our sense perceptions because we are trying to sustain ourselves from that. And what God is saying is that by doing that you just get depleted. You're not getting anything. It's very, very similar to the work that an addict has to do to get over their physical and psychological dependence on their substance or their behavior, which has taken over their lives. And so this is on a much, much more refined level, that we are trying to become completely, you can say sober, you can say free, you can say ones who are sustained by God, which is a kind of sustenance that really sustains you, rather than trying to sustain yourself from something which is emptying you.
Sister Denise, I want to come back to that subject in a later chapter, okay? But at this stage of the conversation between Arjuna and God, Arjuna asks God to describe the soul who is steadfast in deep meditation. How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he move? And the answer that he receives is, when he leaves behind all desires emerging from the mind, Arjuna, and is contented in the self by the self, then he is said to be one whose wisdom is steady. A number of questions come to mind in this respect, Sister Denise, because the self is capital S, but it's capital S for both selves, which I'd like you to explain. And my second question, and more important one, is when he leaves behind all desires emerging from the mind. Mr. Denise, where would one find such a human being who's left behind all desires emerging in the mind? How does one become this person?
One thing you have to be very aware of is that a person like this is extraordinarily rare. So Arjun, in one sense, is every man, but in another sense, is only one.
That is very powerful, because at some point in the future, I was going to ask you, why Arjuna?
He's the selected. He's the one who, his name means he picks up the challenge. You know, and so what you have here is God is saying to humanity, look, I'm your father, you're my child, are you up for it? Can you be a real child of God? That means, you know, for somebody who is in the Christian culture, can you be the Christ? There's only one Christ, you see. And a Buddhist, you see, in Buddhism, you have this aspiration to be a bodhisattva, but there's only one Buddha, you see. And so you can't really expect that these descriptions can refer to just anybody who comes along down the road. This is very, very extraordinary, but the point that's interesting is anyone who comes along may have the capacity. Once you start to go down that road, you discover whether or not you do have the capacity. And in the Gita, maybe in a slightly different area of the Gita, in another chapter, it mentions that there are very few people who are able to recognize and realize God. And then there's a much larger number of people who hear about it, think it's really great, but they don't actually get it. And then there's a very, very large group about it who really don't know what it is. But they believe. You see. We're not talking about humanity as everybody's equal at all. Everybody exists, no doubt, but there's a hierarchy of souls. And I think the knowledge of the Gita is really directed to those who are really on the top end of that hierarchy. But the status people have in the world today doesn't necessarily reflect by any means their position in the spiritual hierarchy. So you may be in a very high position in the world today, but from a spiritual angle, not so high. You may be in a very lowly position in the world today. Nobody knows who you are, nobody gives you the time of day, but yet you have that capacity, and you have love for God, you have love for humanity, and once you start to awaken your spiritual potency, you go higher and higher and higher and higher, and you become seen to be an extraordinary person. And this is the encounter with God. This is what it will do for you.
One's encounter with God, as you just put it, will cause the mind not to be agitated by misfortune, whose desire for pleasures has disappeared, whose passion, fear, and anger have departed, and whose meditation is steady, is said to be a sage.
Yes, exactly. So that one, rarest of humans, where do you find those people? You have to look for them somewhere. And it could be anybody, you see. But put that person into a classroom situation where they're studying, you know, in a way, there's the classroom as Krishna teaching Arjun in the chariot on the battlefield. That's the classroom. And he is up for it, you see. But there's lots of other warriors who are not. But what did he do in terms of the civil war between himself and his brothers, his cousins? He chose God. The other one, Duryodhana, chose God's powers, you see. So it comes down to that choice, you know, what is most important for you as a human being? If God and the discovery of God and the discovery of yourself is the most important thing, that's a sign that you're a pretty up there person.
Tell us what is meant by sense objects turn away from the abstinent man, but the taste for them remains. Can you run and can you hide? However, sorry, Sister Denise, it goes on to say, but the taste also turns away from him who has seen the Supreme. Seen the Supreme.
Seen with these two eyes, seen with this eye. You can't see the Supreme with the two eyes.
Okay, so the sense objects turn away, but the taste for them remains.
But well, I mean, you can turn away physically, but you won't forget. You see, this is why desire, it comes up a lot in the Gita, and I think what people are addicted to is beauty.
There's this expression by Oscar Wilde which comes to mind. He once said, I'd like to be delivered from temptation, although I would like it to keep in touch.
Well, that's a perfect description, isn't it?
Yeah, it covers the answer. You want to share anything more on this?
I'd just say that I'm reminded of this idea that, you know, blessed are the meek, for they will see God.
Yeah.
You see, and the meek doesn't mean meek and mild, but meek means disciplined.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay, now Sister Denise, that's news to me, because meek in my vocabulary, the vocabulary of Maglapalli, means docile, timid, spineless. It's not a compliment if somebody calls you meek.
Right, but if you want to tame a wild elephant, you use the word meek. To meek the elephant doesn't mean to make him meek and mild, but it means that he comes into discipline, because you meek the elephant by putting it in between two disciplined elephants. So, of course, what happens is people who start getting into a spiritual practice tend to go for the meek and mild approach to life, you see, which gives spiritual practice a bit of a bad name, in the sense that it's just for obedient, docile, etc. But really, a spirituality is about the one who has the full breadth, the full spectrum, but they know how to handle their feelings, and they have full power. They're not meek and mildy type of people at all.
Yes, Denise, the next stanza is very graphic, because the ocean comes to mind when there's a storm. The turbulent senses carry away forcibly the mind, Arjuna, even of the striving man of wisdom. My question to you is, how does one who is making such noble effort manage his turbulent senses, and how does he manage his mind? It's hard, and God is saying to his friend, my dear Arjuna, it's this difficult. Be prepared.
Yes.
It's a warning, isn't it?
It is a warning, and also a person who engages in spiritual practice in a very committed way will have to encounter all hell breaking loose in their mind, their gut, their heart, everything. And you have to be able to accommodate it. We have this expression, the power of accommodation. You must be able to accommodate it, to hold that huge storm and ride it out and get through to the end of it and carry on without being broken by it or without it taking you over. That's power.
Yes, Denise, the next stanza I find rather interesting. It reads, when he withdraws completely the senses from the object of the senses, as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, his wisdom stands firm. God is saying to Arjuna, this is the man that I would like you to be. his encouragement in the sense is very sweet, because he's offering him the knowledge of what you will achieve when you become this. And he's still sensing Arjuna's reluctance to believe him, isn't it? Not because Arjuna lacks faith, but because of the turmoil that Arjuna is facing.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you understand the stanza, Sister Denise?
Looking at the word wisdom, which again, I think I would put it slightly differently, or maybe a different interpretation of wisdom.
Prajna. Prajna.
It means you're aware. You don't lose your awareness. You see, when you withdraw your sense perception, you withdraw your mind from your sense organ, because the mind is on the inside, then you have the sense organ, and then you have the thing that you're sensing. So there's three. When your soul is in the sense organ, then it's also in the object. But when you withdraw from the sense organ, you have that space, and you are not on the same dimension of matter because you've withdrawn. So then you're able to remain aware of what the wisdom is, or what the knowledge is, and then you can stay steady. But everything depends upon detachment from the body.
Is that where one starts?
It's where you start, it's where you end up.
Okay, Sister Denise, I think we'll stop right here, as usual on a cliffhanger, because there's for each answer that you give, there's a number of other questions that pop into my mind, irrespective of what I've written down here. So we'll take up what you just said in the next episode. So there you have it, brothers and sisters. Sister Denise has shared what the stanzas that we discussed in this chapter, in chapter 2, refer to, how you relate to your body, how you relate to things and people. It's important to understand and manage your feelings in respect of things and people. And I do hope that this has been of some educational interest to you. And thank you for joining us. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.